Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Maryland Online's free webinar series. Today's topic is culturally responsive teaching in the online environment. Our presenter today is Dr. Yazdan, the Director of Online Learning and Instructional Innovation at Frederick Community College. Dr. Rod is a graduate of the Maryland Online Leadership Residential Program and currently serves on the Maryland Online Board of Directors. We ask that you keep yourselves muted, please, and to sign into the chat with your name and institution, especially if you need any verification later, and to please put all your questions in the chat. We're going to address them at the end of the presentation. Dr. Rod has allowed time for that. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Rod.
Hello and good morning. Again, I'm Dr. Yazdan, and I'm Director of Online Learning and Instructional Technology at Frederick Community College. It is a pleasure to be with you today and sharing this presentation with you all around the United States and Maryland colleges and universities. I want to start with telling you a little bit of story about why this culturally responsive teaching is important to me. This is my passion, because before I come to the United States, I took everything for granted. Culture, education, family value, because we didn't know anything that it made me to think about those values until I came to the United States. And then I realized the cultural values, prior learning, how important are this in my life in pursuit of my college degrees and happiness. So when I was a student in one of my science classes, a faculty member was teaching about algorithm. And while he was teaching about algorithm, he mentioned about Al-Karazi, who is a mathematician, invented algorithm that today, even today, we are using his method and methodology in computer science for programming purposes. That made me proud that inspired me to continue with computer science degree for master degrees and for my bachelor degree. That made me proud to think that a person like this existed in my culture, and his importance in terms of developing something that is still used today. So that is why I continued with my education. From this, I want to segue into a philosopher of education, who is John Dewey, father of current or present education in the United States. He said, education is the commitment to excellence in teaching and learning in his Democracy and Education. And I added that education is also a commitment to cultural diversity. And also another important quote that I find from him that it aligned with my passion is that the self is not something ready-made, but something in continuous formation through choice of action. And that is what I chose to be. Culturally responsive teaching in online environment, it stems from a framework that emphasizes on using cultural knowledge, prior experiences, frames of reference, and performance styles of ethnically diverse students to make learning encounters more relevant to and effective for them. Zaretta Hammond, a researcher in higher education, defines the CRT as the process of using familiar cultural information and cultural processes to scaffold learning. CRT focuses on relationship, cognitive scaffolding, and critical social awareness. Now, what is cognitive scaffolding? Is basically guiding questions to get the writer thinking about their topic, can help generate ideas in the brain of students who brainstorming topics, phase of and bring ideas to a student. CRT is the bridge that takes students from what they know to where you want them to go. This came out of FCC Summer Institute 2021. Now, in order to get students to cross the bridge from home to academy, how do we do it? We must be willing to see ourselves as a partner with the students in learning. We must be willing to listen to students and learn from them. Online students access education from multiple locations around the world with multiple capabilities, cultures, attitudes, etc. Learning style. Therefore, online teachers should be able to cater to the need of these students through culturally responsive teaching. What does it mean? Does it mean you have to know everything about their culture? You need to be an expert in their culture? Or you should have information about every aspect of their cultural background, students' cultural background? No, the answer is of course not. In an online learning environment, it means that you acknowledge a variety of cultures and ways of learning through the lens of computer-mediated communication. CRT is a pedagogy that takes a student-centered approach to teaching and recognizes the importance of including student cultural references in all aspects of learning. It is amazing that in 1994, Latson and Billings introduced this to higher education and education environment. CRT also is an andragogy that uses a student's cultural frame of reference to teach curriculum and content. To teaching is focused on the personal and cultural strength, intellectual capabilities, and prior accomplishment of students. In our multicultural society, culturally responsive teaching reflects democracy at its highest level. It means doing whatever it takes to ensure that every student achieves his or her potential. Why it is important? Why CRT is important? Because it reduces the gap between learners' own cultural identities and the collective cultures of schools, the instructor, and the course. The gap inhibits the learning process and referred to as barrier to universal design of learning. Now, to help the students be successful, we shall put the learners' cultural identities at the core of learning process and use learners' cultural knowledge, background, experiences, and frame of reference in our teaching. The example that I give you with regard to algorithm. Now, with regard to culturally responsive teaching, there are some characteristics that is associated. For example, to have a positive perspective on the student. This means that teachers should speak to students about their hopes and aspirations. Listen to a student carefully and value their points of view. Let the student know how teacher can help. To have effective and consistent communication of high expectation. So the message that is communicated to students must be consistent, and the expectation about their advancement in higher education must be clearly stated. Effective and consistent communication of high expectation help students develop a healthy self-concept. Student-centered learning within the context of culture, that people from different cultures learn in different ways. Their expectation for learning may be different. To maximize learning opportunities, teachers should gain knowledge of cultures represented in their classroom and adapt lessons to that. They reflect ways of communication and learning that are similar to the students. The classrooms also, whether it is online or face-to-face, must be a student-centered instruction, must have a student-centered instruction. That means learning is cooperative, is collaborative, and community-oriented. Students are encouraged to direct their own learning, to work with their students on research projects and assignments that are both culturally and socially relevant to them. Culturally mediated instruction must be incorporated into the lectures. Instruction incorporates and integrates diverse way of knowing, understanding, and representing information. A student needs to understand that there is more than one way to interpret a statement, even event or action. Reshaping the curriculum. The curriculum should be integrated, interdisciplinary, meaningful, and student-centered. It should include issues and topics related to the student's background and culture. Teacher as facilitator. Teachers are not the sage on a stage anymore. With the internet today, students have access to all information. So the teachers must be guiding, mediator, consultant, instructor, and advocate for students, helping to effectively connect their culturally and community-based knowledge to the classroom learning experience. Now, we have to also realize that how we can include culturally responsive teaching in our online courses. This is very important because students can learn better, students can respond better, students can connect better, students can have a sense of belonging. Culturally responsive teaching also allows us to customize our teaching to our learner. Zaretta Hammond developed Ready for Rigor framework for culturally responsive teaching, in which educators can use the 4 quadrants such as awareness, learning partnership, community of learning environment, and learning processes to get the students ready for rigorous critical thinking and independent learning and make them successful in online courses. In Quadrant 1, as you saw, is awareness that focuses a lot on the individual educator experience. We shall identify, know, and own our own cultural lens. Broaden our interpretation of culturally and linguistically diverse students. That means, how can I seek to understand and apply what I know and how to put it in action? Think about the different types of culture, individualism and collectivism. Individualism refers to, emphasizes personal achievement, regardless of the expenses of group goal. And collectivism is like China, Japan, and some other African countries or Middle Eastern countries, that they emphasize on the group goal. And that is very important to our students because we receive students from all over the world. We have to also acknowledge the socio-political context around race and language. In a culture that race and language is talked about, we need to connect our education to those languages and races that exist. We have to link our culture, we have to link to the culture and society. Quadrant 2 talks about learning partnership, reimagine student-teacher relationship as partnership. That means we have to refer to them by their name because the name is the sweetest things to each individual. In our communication, we should be respectful and use proper greetings. Take responsibility to reduce social emotional stress of students. In an online environment, bullying, in online discussion board, stereotype thread, and microaggression is, we see it as teachers, we see it. And as teachers, our responsibility is to step in and reduce those microaggressions. Balance between showing the students we are committed to them and we care about their success. That is a methodology called care, trust, and push. So we have to show students that we care about them. We respect them. We want they succeed. We are responsive to their needs. And then we should create trust. How we can create trust in an online environment? By introducing ourselves, by telling them what our hobby is, what we are interested, so that they can make connection with us. And then once this reciprocated, we can push for higher achievement. Now, I answered this question: how do we develop the care and trust in an online environment? By showing them that we are here to help them to succeed. We are here to make connection with them. In Quadrant 3 is about education, is about being a family, is not about individual. In an online class that is like a family, we learn together, we grow together, we collaborate, we engage. Ensure that your online course is intellectually and socially safe for learning. How do we do this? We include netiquette rules, anti-bullying statement, and consequences to those issues. We can do that in discussion board. We can do that in our syllabus. We can do that in our communication with the student. Give a student space to use their voice in your online class. For example, in discussion board and forum, in assignment, project-based assignment shared with class, gamifying project. This gives the student a space to pronounce who they are, to create, to identify themselves. So the more space we have for a student's voice, the more comfortable the students get contributed. In Quadrant 4, which is about information processing, how can I guide my students to be critical and creative thinkers in online environment? We can provide an appropriate challenge in order to stimulate brain growth. For example, we can provide them with research projects, productive struggles through challenging assignments that is within student reach. We can provide them with critical thinking projects and papers. Connect new content to culturally relevant examples and metaphors from students' community and everyday lives. We should find a way to make our teaching content relevant to our students, provide choices on how they want to demonstrate their learning. Also, we should or we can use formative assessment and feedback to increase intellective capacity. As you know, formative assessment, it should have low impact on students' final grade, and that is just used for providing feedback so that the students know where they are and how they can do better in your classes. There are some strategies in online learning that we can implement culturally responsive teaching. We can build authentic relationships. Students are on the on-ramp to engagement on learning. We should get to know our students on their terms to establish reciprocated trust. Build social presence. Use online forum. Create icebreaker discussion. Introduce yourself. Add a photo of yourself or a short video and assign a student to do the same. Add some personal information, including culturally meaningful aspect of self-identification. By disclosing personal information, it is likely that the students will reciprocate, and that lead to an increase in trust and support in the course. That came out of the research from Clutter in 1995. We should encourage learners to incorporate their feeling, experiences, examples, and idea in work competition. We have to frequently promote learners to bring what they have to share to the class from their own perspectives, from their own experiences. The students open themselves when talking about their situation and how they handle it and get their emotion out more often. We have to encourage learners to evaluate their positive and negative feeling. That is easy in online environment. We should use counter stereotypic exemplars. There are images that represent individuals in ways that are not consistent with the stereotypes, such as a black male teacher, a female construction worker, or a Latin surgeon. Instead, we can bring research suggests that such images can help to reduce implicit biases based on stereotypic norms. Instead of this, we can bring examples of accomplished people in our lectures, in our examples. For example, Katherine Johnson, who is a mathematician, an African-American female, that she worked as a mathematician in NASA. And most recently, Mariam Mirzakhani, a Persian female mathematician that is world renowned, and she just recently in 2017 God took her away from us. Mary Jackson is another female African American who is NASA engineer. We have many examples. Men, Guy Kings, who is African American and NASA mechanical engineer. David Stewart is a multi-billion-dollar African American businessman who created board-wide technology. Jose Hernandez, who is a Latino astronaut. Magnell Santana, who is a NASA program analyst. And most recently, and very popular one is Elon Musk, who is an immigrant to United States and created a multi-billion-dollar business from Tesla to SpaceX and more. So these examples for our students in online learning creates a sense of belongingness. It creates a sense of proudness. It helps students to continue with their education, whether it's online or is in higher education or is in face-to-face environment. If unintentionally triggered a stress response in a student because of something you said, you really want to know that, to learn from it, correct it, and be conscious about it. We all have this kind of deficit thinking. We may say something that we don't realize it at the time, but when we realize it, we have to acknowledge it, we have to own it, and we have to take actions to correct it. Reducing students' stress response in inspiring them to excel, prime their brain to be ready to learn. Another strategy is to create a community of learners by building on values of collaboration and connection to create intellectual safety. This promotes sense of belonging to students, help students work together, learn with each other, share their story and interest, and not feeling isolated. There is a research from two researchers, Jagger and Zhu, that came out from Community College Research Center, and they investigated 32 online community college courses for 4 different elements: organization and presentation, learning objectives and assessment, interpersonal interaction, use of technology. And they found that interpersonal interaction was by far the most significant factor in the students' grade. The students in low interaction courses earned nearly 1 letter grade lower than those in high interaction courses. Interesting research. We should also establish inclusion. That means inviting them to dance, not just bring them to dance. It involves developing a foundation for respect and connectedness through routines, norms, and equitable treatments for learners. We should be respectful to a student need. A student value the timeliness of information and feedback. Your instruction must be understandable. Expectation of the course, assignments, requirements, and due date must be clearly mentioned. Instructors shall allow students to make adjustments as the course or training advances. We shall also provide messages that are respectful, positive, encouraging, timely, and frequent. Instructors shall be proactive in communication, providing messages that are helpful, positive, encouraging, timely, and frequent. This will assist learners to develop social presence and caring behavior. We shall also encourage students in critical self-reflection. According to Jones' research, critical self-reflection offers segue into experiential learning and internalization to create long-term learning. Is that strategies for culturally responsive teaching connected to a prior framework? Yes. Community of inquiry framework. Basically, culturally responsive teaching strategies are rooted in community of inquiry framework. What is that? That explains deep and meaningful learning online as occurring at the intersection of social, cognitive, and teaching presences. as you can see in this picture. Now, I explain what each of them are. Culturally responsive teaching discussed in this presentation are rooted in COI elements. Social presence is social presence projects your teaching persona through announcement, email, video, forum, etc. In an online environment, these types of activities also model behavior for students and establish reciprocated trust between teacher and student. That is where you create trust with presence. So by incorporating personal profiles and photo and encouraging a student to do the same thing, you create social presence, because the students like to learn something about each other to feel more connected. Online environment basically is an isolated environment. By doing so, by incorporating social profiles and pictures, you can make it a little bit more open environment. Teaching presence facilitates students' learning activities by using discussion board, interactive assignments, scaffolding projects, etc. Provide the students with timely and supportive feedback. Use care, trust, push method. Connect new content to culturally relevant example. I use very often group projects in my courses when I teach. For example, recently I taught a database course, and I divided the students into groups. So the group were encouraged to work on different parts of the projects and collaborate with one another for getting the best grade or the better grade. Therefore, they put more collaboration, they put more engagement, they communicated with one another with Zoom and Team, and at the end, each group created a unique, sophisticated, advanced project that they enjoyed working in it. Some complained, and some others, and they completed a desired project that they wanted to create, not that I dictated to them to create a specific project. So they created the project, they followed through, they communicated, they engaged, and they submitted. And this cognitive presence, teacher and students are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained reflection and discourse. Provide frequent opportunities for testing and feedback. Provide an appropriate challenge in order to stimulate brain growth. Encourage diverse point of view. Ask open-ended questions, and etc. So these are the three elements of COI. In the end, delivering culturally responsive teaching strategies in an online learning can help teachers to motivate and engage students, facilitate brain processing, cultivate critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. Strengthen cultural identities, and promote a sense of safety and belonging. Culturally responsive educators are those who continually examine their own cultural perspectives and biases to ensure that they are creating environments that are supportive to all learners. Now, I want to know what are the specific online strategies you have used to apply culturally responsive teaching in online or hybrid environment. Go back to the previous slide. So I will end my presentation here, and the forum or the presentation is open to question and answers. I appreciate your time for being here and listening to this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rod. I am opening the floor for questions. If anyone would like to put anything in the chat, or if, as suggested, you have any, if anyone would like to, I think with 12, if you even wanted to raise your hand or unmute and share any strategies that you've used to maybe provide a culturally responsive environment in your classroom. We have one question about, Dr. Rod, would you be able to share your slides with the group?
The slide is shared with the group.
Yeah, if you send them to me, I can have
Oh, yes,
Jenny
yes,
send them.
definitely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Definitely, I can share it. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So yes, Laura, we will go ahead and send them to the group with the recording. And we have another question. Can we contact you in case we have interest from our faculty for a training on this topic?
Certainly.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to.
Myra, if you do not have Dr. Rod's email, just you can contact myself or Jenny, and we will get that to you. And we have Sherry. Do you want to just unmute and talk?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Sherry Lycan, and I'm a faculty member at Maryland University of Integrative Health. And I wanted to share one of the things that I do. I have discussion groups in my classes, and I teach. I used to teach on campus and online, and now it's all online. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially with the pandemic, with people feeling isolated, I was working to try to bring students together in real time, while also being mindful that students are from all over in different time zones, and wanted it to be equitable to everybody. So with one of my discussion groups, what I do is there's a discussion forum weekly, and I also offer students the opportunity to come on live and to hold, to give them the opportunity to just come together and discuss the discussion, do the discussion forum live. And I usually move the times around so that, sometimes it's at noon and sometimes it's in the evening, so that I can accommodate as many students as possible. So that's something I do to, to try to bring students together and encourage people to talk to each other and build community.
That is a very good approach. I like that approach. And also we have to, should be conscious about making the culturally awareness to students so that they feel comfortable that we are considering how they get educated, how they grow up, and we cater to their needs as much as we can to help them to become successful in their education, as well as for their future careers that they have in mind. So your approach is something that I really advocate for. Thank you.
We have I'm sorry, Sherry. We have a request. You mentioned a list of scientists. This is from Myra again. You have mentioned a list of scientists, mathematicians of color. Could you share that list with us?
Yes, I can.
If again,
yes,
yes,
I would love to share that. But do you want me to email it to you that you can share it, or how do you want to share that one? Anyway, I can do it.
if you send it to me, again, I can send it along with the slides and the recording, if that's good.
Sure.
And that way we can get it, if that's okay, Myra. And the recording and slide, they'll be sent out probably later today at, but no later than tomorrow morning. I just have to, it takes a while to process on YouTube. So once that gets all done, and I have to get it from Zoom.
I would like to make one note here that the materials in these slides and presentations are about to be published in within a paper. So if it is available later on, I will also notify the community of the availability of that paper as well.
Okay, we have another question from Lauren, or comment. You mentioned that instructors can become more aware of how students learn within the context of their culture. Do you have recommendations to instructors for how to build that awareness?
Sure. For example, in the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that one of the aspirations that I get from my teacher was just to in a computer science class to mention where what the algorithm is and who invented the algorithm and where the algorithm came from. That created a sense of proudness in me and in my culture, and that teacher didn't know where I am from. It didn't know what my culture is. And the teacher just mentioned that, and I went after it and I find out, oh, that stems from my own culture. And that created ignition in my mind that, okay, we can do it as well. If somebody did it in my culture, I can do it as well. The same thing is that the name of the scientists and the businessmen of colors that I mentioned, that can create an encouragement to our student of minority communities, so that they know that is achievable, that is not just a degree, but we can help them to achieve their goals once they communicate that one to us. There are many ways of advocating for adding culturally responsive into our lectures, but we have to think about it. We have to research about it. That was how I get inspired, and in my classrooms, I try to inspire my students by learning from them during the introduction, during self-introduction, during the first forum that we have together. So I find some cues that is encouraging cues to my students. And very often I encourage them to be positive, to struggle through their difficulties and strive for making their education and processes of life better, to learn that they have to struggle, to learn that they can survive. All those are part of ways that we can incorporate into our lectures. I hope I answered your question. If you have more, if you want to know more, or if you want to talk more, my email is in the chat room. You can contact me and we can have more communication with regard to that.
Thank you. And if you're okay, I can, when I send the information to all of the participants, I can include your email there too. So everyone will have their information in one place.
No problem.
Any other questions? This was a very good discussion, and appreciate it. It's a lot of information, and I myself may need to go back through the slides because I want to look at some of the resources, but I really think we all appreciate the hard work that you've put into this topic, Dr. Rod.
Thank you so much.
That.
That's my passion.
Oh,
I enjoy sharing that with the community.
You can it is evident. If you wouldn't mind stop sharing, I'm going to, I will put a slide up here at the end before we wrap up. Can you give me 1 second? I don't know if you could see that or not.
I did stop sharing.
Okay. All right. You should see the slide, but it may not be. There you go. Can everybody see the slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If any of you need to take a picture of that for your professional development person on your campus or for your deans, I'll leave that up there for a couple of minutes here. And with that, if there aren't any other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you again. We will be sending out the link to the recording, the information that was requested, including the list of the scientists of color, and information to contact Dr. Rod if you have further questions. And thank you again.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart to participate and listen to this presentation. I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.